Howdy, Michael, the Mercedes guy here. A little hoarse, but still on the job. And we're going to do a 108, 109 heater box removal. Now this is a real job. You want to figure on maybe a day, day and a half, just to get it out of there. The joke is they start with a heater box and they build the whole car around it. So you pretty much got to remove about everything here. To start with, you pull this grill off. It has two teeny screws, one at each corner. And then these two items. And then there's 4 screws that hold the speaker in. I've already pulled them out. Be very careful. You don't want to poke your finger on that. It's very fragile paper. By the way, how do you test a speaker to know if it's good? You take a little AA battery and you touch one wire on one end and just touch the wire on the other end, and if it makes a little noise, the speaker's good. The other thing you check is carefully push on the cone, and if it moves freely without a gritty feeling, it'll probably sound pretty good. Okay, speaker out. Now, this wood piece must be removed. On some models, there's wood right here that you remove, the 2 screws to get the wood off on each side. On other models, it's a piece of vinyl with screws. And on the very latest models, there's no screws, so you just simply grab the vinyl piece and pull it backwards, and it'll slide off. There's 2 clips on the back side of the vinyl, that vinyl type. Anyway, to remove this wood piece, there are only 2 screws holding it in place, along with 2 clips that are fastened to the wood on each end, underneath the wood. So you remove these screws. I'm not actually going to do it on this car because I don't have to remove the heater box. We're going to use a parts car for the rest of the video. But this is a tricky piece to get out. You'll want to have an assistant help you. The reason being, you need to bend that piece of wood in quite a curve for the end to be able to pass by this piece of aluminum that's fabric colored. Now, sometimes I actually even remove this piece, bend it back slightly. You don't want to bend it too much or it's hard to get back on properly. But this piece of wood has got to pass by here. So one person over here grabbing the wood, another person over here with their, so 4 hands on the wood, and you bend one end in, at the same time the other person bends the other end in, and the wood comes out. Okay, we're going to go to a parts car for the remainder. Now, I've already done a video on removing the heater controls in the dash. To remove the heater box, if you need to service it, if it's leaking basically, because the heater valves, if they're leaking, you can do that job while the heater box is still in the car. But if your heater box itself is leaking, you're going to have to pull it out. Or if your heater fan, no longer works, and you've done my trick of going through the air vent here and getting the heater fan blade moving. If that is not successful, then you're going to have to pull a heater box. Now, if you got to pull your heater box, you do not have to remove the heater control cables from the box. You do have to remove the faceplate for the chrome plate around the heater controls, and you got to take out your glove box and ashtray. You got to do everything that's in the process of removing the heater controls, except you don't have to remove the cables from the heater box. You can remove the controls and cables and heater box in one unit. So I'm doing this on a parts car, as you can tell. So the first step is to disconnect the two hoses to your heater box, your water hoses. And there are rubber grommets around them that you need to either pull this way, or I just push them inside. Now, as with time, rubber gets hard and shrinks, and this firewall pad has now shrunk to where I cannot really get to the grommet on this one. So that requires removing this firewall pad. So there's a few screws, and you can peel it off. Okay, I pulled this dash pad off. Now where the little clamps are for the wiring harness, you'll find this little collar. So you want to keep track of those. And you just glue this back on, and then glue the pad back on when you've completed the process. But anyway, now I can get to this really dried out grommet, because they're really a pain to get those off of there, and you got to take them off. So you get out your screwdriver and your serious cutting tool, and you got to deal with those suckers. And I'm pushing it to the inside. And you want to, in this process, try to move this brass tube the least possible, so you don't break it loose from the heater box. Okay, that one's on the inside, and it's the same process for the other one. We're going to be going back and forth with a couple of parts cars here to make this video complete. So this one has the vinyl with the screws. So I've got the screws out. You pull that off. Now you got to pull off your dash pad. So normally these things shrink so much that the screws that hold them in, it's all shrunk to where the screws don't hold anymore. So that once you get the screws loose, now to pull off your dash pad, if you're going to use the same one and put it back on, you want to heat up your car nice and warm, have it toasty in here, and do that the night before so that this is pretty flexible. And you may want to also treat it with some vinyl treatment to give it a little more moisture, because these things, of course, dry out over age, and pulling it off, you don't want to crack it. So you want to careful. It's held under here with some clips. So you want to pull on both sides, kind of equally. There you go. There's the dash pad off. And you see these little clips right here. They're like this, and they go over these tangs that stick out of the dash. Okay, dash pad off. Why do we take the dash pad off? Because you have to access these screws that hold the defroster ducts in place. Now, this is the real bear, or one of them, and that is, got to get this left duct work out of here, because the heater fan is right there, and you got to move the heater box this way. So this duct has got to be out of here. And I've already pulled out the instrument cluster, and of course we have that in other videos. Get the wiring out of the way here. Okay. Now, right here is a little rubber connector, very flexible, so that can be pulled off one side, then pushed off of the defroster duct and taken out of there. Very flexible. Okay. Then we need to undo these two screws right here and pull these clips off. Okay, you need a real short Phillips to get these screws, and it can be a real challenge sometimes. So a pair of pliers to help on there. Okay, I got that baby loose and out. Okay, then you need to pop this clip off of the heater duct itself. Here we go. That's what that little baby looks like. When you put it back together, you want to take a pair of pliers and pinch this just a little bit, because pulling it off, I've opened it up a little bit. It won't hold that well. The next step, and there's another rubber coupler right here. So you want to get it off. And of course, putting this particular one back on is a real challenge. So when you go to reinstall it, you'll want to warm it up a bit so that it's more flexible. Now, it happens to be glued to the hard plastic defroster duct, so it's a little challenge getting it off of there. You got to get a screwdriver in and get it loose. And often you can damage it just getting it off. So if you need another one, just let me know. And you may start with 4-letter words, but I tell you, they never help. It's better just to learn patience. And okay, I've got it off of the defroster duct, and then I pull it upwards off of the heater box opening. And that's what that one looks like. We want to remove these two screws that hold this right defroster vent, and this screw here that is the distributor in the middle. Okay, with those screws out, then there's a little baffle under here that is held in with a couple of Phillips screws, and it's a good idea to get it off of the heater box before you break it. And I see that somebody's already removed that one for me. Great. It's seldom you find these that aren't broken, so that's for sale, folks. Then we got to get this heater box loose, and there are 3 10mm headed bolts in there. There's one that's accessible right through here, and one on each side. And it's probably a lot easier to show you where they are once I have the heater box out. So we'll get this box out of here. Okay, on the top of the heater box there's this setup right here that you want to remove these 3 brackets. This holds the radio. This you get out of there, and then you get this bracket off. And then the next step is to pop off the electrical connection off of the controls here. So you want a screwdriver up in here to pry that connector off carefully now. And then back in there is this Phillips headed screw that attaches the left defroster to the heater box that you want to remove. And there's that screw, and I'm helping myself along with a pair of pliers there. And it's barely cooperating. I should have brought a longer screwdriver. Okay, and then the right bolt is right in there. And as you can see, removing that little air deflector is important. Get it out of the way in order to reach this one. And this is where it's handy to have a swivel head ratchet. This is my favorite tool. And that sucker's out. And we got the same thing on the other side, which is harder to get to. Okay, I pulled off this deflector from the left side, and voila, it doesn't have broken tabs. That's rare. Now I can get a shot through here under that left bolt. And again, I'm using my swivel head, and you want to use a swivel end extension when you do this. Makes it a lot easier. Okay, so I've got that left bolt out, and now this box is starting to be loose, but it still is going to be a lot of fun. On the defrosters, you need to get a tool under here and pop those clips off. Then you can force this down. Now this car this is a 250, So it's a little different than the 280. It has these little distribution boxes for the air under here, and they require removal. And there's a little lever that comes out through this rectangular slot. You got to pull that off. And then you've got to unscrew the fasteners on it. And it's probably best, I'll show you once I get it out of there.